So we will now call to order the regular meeting of the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Board of Directors for Wednesday, December 17th. Rosie, whenever you're ready,
Yeah.
please give a roll call.
Here, Director Friel. Here, Director Gallagher.
Here.
Director Pinenfeld.
Here.
And Trinians.
Here. There's no closed session for the Healthcare District meeting tonight, so there's nothing to report. We'll move on to agenda modifications for consideration from staff. Any agenda modifications? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda. Anyone online wishing to speak on matters not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on. I'll now see if there's anyone in the public wishing to speak on matters not on tonight's agenda.
I wanted to share something.
Please.
Can I just stand here?
Sure.
Go up there. Okay. So the facility today had an Anna Montgomery Stewardship Collaborative. We had 18 people attend. We had, besides our staff, Dr. Claypool was there as well with the TUI. Dr. Kong, our ID, came down to kind of a meet and greet. We also had Central Coast Alliance for Health represented, Salud Cabo La Gente, and Santa Cruz Public Health. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to better share the data that we generate. Our antibiogram is an example of one of them. Our antibiogram shows the bugs that are coming into the hospital and what it's resistant to. And the bigger picture is we share all the same patients. We're trying to figure out how to get our information, Dominican's information, Sutter's data, share it with the county. And so it was a really great meeting. It was very low key. We had lunch, a meet and greet, but everyone got to actually see each other and meet each other. So it's a good thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on items not on tonight's agenda? No? Okay, I'll close down the public comment for matters not on the agenda and open up to comments from board members before we get into the consent calendar.
I'd ask members of the public to rewatch our hospital board meeting comments from the board members, but I would abbreviate that by saying, it's the end of a calendar year, beginning of a new year. I have a lot of gratitude for all of the staff of the district who came together. I have gratitude for our hospital foundation. There's so many good things that have happened this year, and were not for the finances and the changes in federal policy, we'd be in a much different mindset about expansion and what we're going to be doing next. And I am thankful that despite the challenges, this community, this district team, and the hospital staff continue to work collaboratively together and how to problem solve through the moment. Of course, thanks and appreciation to our fellow district board members.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from board members before we move on? All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have 4 items. Yes, 4 items on tonight's consent calendar. The minutes approval for November 19th, 2025. Chief Financial Officer Monthly Finance Performance Update, which the board of the Watsonville Community Hospital received earlier today. The Pajaro Valley Healthcare District 2026 Consolidated Budget Approval, which was reviewed by the board of the hospital earlier today. And the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District 2025 Consolidated Audit Agreement, which was also reviewed and approved by the hospital board. Any questions or comments on either of these items? Okay. I do have a question, and this is for Allison. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but for item number 3, as we were in our 5-minute recess for the budget approval, I'm wondering, and this is for potentially the next meeting in January. So while we have you here, as the board chair, would I have the authority to, between now and the January meeting, to set up an ad hoc committee to review and explore potential budget actions, I suppose, as it relates to departments, and get that process moving? Or would I would likely like to come back to the board and set that up and appoint 2 members, through a public process, but am I able to set up an ad hoc committee if the timing of that does not work? Am I clear on that question? I apologize.
Yeah, I think you're asking if you can set up an ad hoc committee after, like, outside of this meeting.
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
yeah, as it relates to the potential budget actions to explore how we make up that $5 million loss.
If it's truly an ad hoc committee, not a standing committee just formed for that limited purpose, you can do so, but we have to obviously keep it under a quorum. We need to keep it temporary. It needs to be advisory, and we need to bring the recommendations back to the full board, which is what normally the ad hoc committees do. That's usually how you form them, as you know. So as
Right.
long as it's truly one, then that would be okay.
And I could do that outside of the board meeting as well as the board chair. Is that right?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a secondary question to that, Allison? Does that formation of the ad hoc committee have to come to the full board to ratify that formation? I thought we had done that once in the past. No?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asked. I thought we were going to go to that step next. I would advise that you, or that the board approve that if you feel the need to set up an ad hoc committee, you'll do so. So that way the board is approving the formation of that ad hoc committee here. And if you feel the need to do it, you could set it up before the meeting, with the less than a quorum, temporary, all of the stuff that I just talked about. And then we can bring it back in the next meeting and you can, say who those members are or how that was done. Rosie, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it has to go to the board either before or
Either
after,
before or
put it in the record.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't plan to make a motion, just wanted to understand the potential tools in front of us right here to start that conversation that began in the hospital board meeting. So, any additional questions for staff about the consent calendar? Okay, then I am gonna open up to public comment on the consent calendar. Anyone wishing to speak on either of these 4 items online? Okay, seeing no raised hands, anyone in person? Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the board for an appropriate motion.
I'll move approval of the consent with just commentary that the consolidated budget includes the budget for the hospital as well as the district's budget. The district's budget between Coastal Health Partners and our district went in with a small surplus. Our challenges in the hospital's budget, and the commentary there is by March, we'll have a lot more insight into how good or how much better or worse the hospital budget might look for 2026. But right now we're taking action related to the Par Valley Healthcare District and Coastal Health Partners budget. My contrary, I'm feeling a little, maybe I'm tired. All I'm really trying to say is there's more work to be done by the hospital board by the month of April 2026.
Okay. The second, thank you. Sorry. The cookie did worse.
I'll take a roll on this item. Director Cox? Yes. Director Friel? Yes. Director Gallagher?
Yeah.
Director Pimentel?
Yes.
Chair King.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. This is the organizational meeting and election of the 2026 Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Board officers. We have 2 items in front of us. One is to present the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Board members with the information necessary to be prepared to elect officers for the offices of chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary during the January 28th, 26th regular board meeting. And 2 is to pass a motion to form an officer election nominating ad hoc committee of less than a quorum of the board and appoint a committee chair. Steve, any additional comments you want to make to this?
The only other comment I would make is the one that we made last year, which was lesson that we had from the previous year, that when we have not necessarily the nominating committee, but the officers themselves, to the extent that there's consistency from one board to the next, certainly helps with minimizing confusion for staff. We had different boards a couple of years ago, and we had the same boards the past year, and that was helpful, I think, for everybody. So, our slate of officers for the two boards.
Right. And do want to bring up to the board before I open up to additional comments, and then obviously the public comment, just the would be great to have, and I think remove any sort of confusion about the work of the ad hoc committee that was just formed by the hospital board. If there were mirroring boards or mirroring ad hoc committees of the officer election nominating ad hoc committee for the healthcare district as well. Obviously open to discussion and deliberation of that, but just as a process, just a comment there. Any questions about this before I open it up to public comment? No? Okay, we'll now open up public comment for item number 5. Anyone online wishing to speak on item number 5? Okay, seeing none. Anyone in person? Seeing none, I'll close down the public comment. I'll bring it back to the board for any additional comments, deliberation, and an appropriate motion for number 5.
I'll move approval to mirror the hospital board's action, in that we formed an ad hoc committee of 2 members consisting of Chair Nunez and myself, and that I would serve as committee chair.
Second.
Okay.
Whoever.
All right, thank you, Directors Pimentel and Friel for motion in the second. I'll take roll. Director Cox?
Yes.
Director Friel?
Yes.
Director Gallagher?
Yes.
Director Pimentel?
Yes.
Director Nunez?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number 6. This is the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District External Partnerships Update. The contact here is Steve, but I believe the ad hoc will also be helping him in this presentation.
Yeah, I think we're gonna pull up a slide deck that the ad hoc committee has put together to summarize this work, and because I still have a thing, so.
Okay, give me just a moment to share. Think here, good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, perfect. So, just as background and kind of a little bit of the why around the formation of the strategic partnership ad hoc committee, we have had significant financial improvement from 22 to 24, but some pretty critical financial challenges since the 24 election. So, taking over the hospital, the district started with very low cash on hand. That situation has not improved. Really need to make money in order to improve the cash on hand situation. We haven't been able to do that yet, though we got close in 24. Obviously, some things went against us at the end of 24 and into 25. And HR1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, has some significant negative impacts ahead of us that we've talked about through the budgeting process for 2025 and 2026 and beyond. And so we have brought that information to the board in August. In September, the board decided to put the ad hoc committee together, which is made up of Director Nunez and Director Friel, to guide our exploration of a potential strategic partnership, realizing as a group, leadership group and board group, that the vision of a standalone independent healthcare district was a wonderful one, and one that helped save the hospital when it needed it most, and things were going to have to go perfectly for a long time, and they did for a little bit, but then they didn't. And so we're needing to pivot strategically and look for a way that we can partner to preserve jobs, preserve our services, keep care here, and align with a nonprofit government mission-driven organization similar to ours. Tony or Alex, I think.
Yeah.
Probably take it from here.
Definitely. I could take it from here and just want to give an overview of the presentation. Thank you for Steve for the introduction of tonight. So Steve gave us the introduction. We'll speak briefly about the work of the ad hoc committee up until this point. And I know in the previous meeting in October, I had said that I wanted to come here and give a thorough presentation about the work of the ad hoc and possibly have a potential structure or potential announcement to be made here. And we don't have that here tonight. And do want to make the point that it's not as a result of a lack of trying. There's been a lot of great work being done by the ad hoc committee and by our leadership team and by several of our partners as well that which we've been in constant communication with. And so we've been, as we'll see later on in this presentation, we've been doing quite a bit of due diligence on an ongoing basis with various partners and having additional conversations. Aside from these ad hoc committee meetings that we've had over the last 4 months. So as you'll see, 4 meetings in September, 6 meetings in October, 3 in November, and then 3 so far in December, I believe. We might have another one next week as well, too, as a Christmas present to everybody. And so a lot of great work being done by the ad hoc committee to move things in the right direction. And we feel like we are moving in the right direction. In a couple slides, we'll introduce I think in the next slide, but I'd like to stick here. We can see back in the, thank you. We'll introduce our consultant, Eric Tham from Zipper Healthcare Advisors. We brought him aboard a few weeks ago to help us picture what a potential partnership could look like with other local healthcare providers that the full board has tasked the ad hoc committee to review potential partnerships with. One of the things that's not here on this slide here that we'll review later is also the amount of presentations that not only members of the ad hoc committee, but also the general board have been making as well. And so we've had at least a half dozen presentations with community partners, donors, and other local groups such as Rotary clubs and chambers about the need to establish this ad hoc committee and the work of the ad hoc committee and what the future of the hospital could look like. So as we've been going through that process, it's been great to hear some of the feedback and some of the questions we've been getting from our community. I did say that, we don't come here today to the board, or we come here to the board without a structure of an agreement or some significant news here in terms of a potential partner and a path forward. Not because of a lack of trying, as I said, a bunch of due diligence being done here of not only what a partnership could look like, but what the future of the hospital looks like, but also it's good, and I thought it would be a good look into the work that we're doing now and the work that other healthcare providers across the state of California are also doing, and look at the landscape of what the healthcare industry is going to deal with, not only in the short term, but from 2026 through 2031, at which most, if not all, of the impacts of HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, are going to be rolled out. So with that, we can go on to the next slide, and I'd like to introduce Eric. Eric, we can't see him, but we can definitely hear him if he unmutes. And this is just some background here. Eric, as I said, has been a part of our team and has been brought on as a consultant to help us look into various different potential partnerships with other local healthcare providers, and has been a great addition to the team. Just in the few meetings that we've had that I've been present with him, asking the right questions and getting us thinking in the right ways. And so with that being said, I'll turn it over now to Eric, who will give us, starting in the next slide, an overview of his background and also the sort of landscape in healthcare right now as it relates to potential partnerships across the state of California. So Eric?
Very good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening. Nice to be with you. Uh, yeah, Eric Them. I'm the founder and CEO of Zephyr Healthcare Advisors. I've been in healthcare over 35 years. I work mostly with hospitals in the C-suite and with boards, advising them around strategy, performance improvement, partnerships, and transactions. So I work nationally, but I live in California. I'm based here. I work with a lot of hospitals and systems and districts in the state of California. Right now, I'm working with a half dozen other entities that are financially distressed and trying to figure out what to do, including some other districts. So, I'm happy to, work with your team and help how I can. Happy to answer any questions tonight. I am going to go through 3 or 4 slides and just give you some of my outside perspective. So next slide. So here we are in California. I will say, having worked nationally, California is one of the most difficult states to operate in as a healthcare provider. Um, there are many systems out there now that will not at all work in the state of California. Even systems that are here, like Common Spirit and HCA, have said, we just aren't going to make any more investments in California. It's too difficult. On top of that, we're a pretty regulated state, and anytime you try to do a deal, like a transaction, you've got to go through our attorney general and a thing called OCA. So it's become pretty onerous in terms of trying to do a transaction. We've got these things here called unfunded mandates. So we have seismic retrofit, we have uh, nurse staffing ratios, we have minimum wages. So we get these things imposed on us, but then we don't get paid to deal with them, right? Um, we're not in California. Hospitals cannot employ physicians. We're one of 7 or 8 states that has that, which is really interesting, right? Most of the other states allow that. We do not, and it causes some, really interesting dynamics. Our reimbursement rates here are very difficult. When you look nationally, our Medi-Cal and Medicare reimbursement rates are very low. And then, as was referenced, HR1, we're going to be dealing with some, further issues on that front. Some of the supplemental funding pools that we've historically gotten in the state are diminishing. You've got a federal budget deficit, you've got a state budget deficit. And so, the pools of money have been sort of shrinking. Our payer mix is eroding. We've got more government pay, less commercial pay. So, the reimbursements on those, as I said, just aren't adequate, basically. We've got a thing called Kaiser Permanente, which is a closed system, kind of an interesting organization. They do compete against us, though, in certain areas like recruiting physicians and recruiting staff, and they're very successful at doing that. They can be a partner, and they are with certain hospitals out there. And in the rural markets, we really see a lot of challenges around sort of lack of population base. I mentioned the payer mix, ability to recruit and retain talent, and sort of have a critical mass, right, to deal with all of these issues. And so, I would say, having done this a long time, hospitals are very complex, as you know, and trying to understand and figure it all out. And it's becoming even more complicated, particularly for an independent hospital. Next slide. So I don't have this on the slide, but in California, we have about 350 hospitals. 58% of them are not-for-profit, 25% of them are for-profit, and 17% are district or government. So, and there are some distinctions kind of in the, in those categories as we look at sort of the landscape. At one time, years ago, we had 125 independent hospitals in California. Now we have less than 40. And when you look at, those, you can see on the slide, there's a couple hospitals that have just filed bankruptcy in the last month or two. And other hospitals that are sort of imminently looking at that and or closure. Um, Another sort of sad benchmark, if you look at the state, is over the last 10 years that 50 hospitals have actually closed their obstetric units. So at one time they were delivering babies and then they weren't. And I'm familiar with two other hospitals down in Southern California where I am that are closing their units at the end of this month. So, it's just not what we want to see. California has stepped up and issued some loans to some of the distressed hospitals, which you're familiar with. That's helpful. The reality though is those are just loans, right? And at some point you gotta pay those back. So, when you look at hospitals' financials, over half of the hospitals in California are losing money at this point. So, it's pretty grim in terms of the financial snapshot, and, more of them continue to struggle. Next slide. So, what are we seeing in terms of, partnering with a district hospital? It's rare that you would see an acquisition. So what kind of other structures, it's possible, but what kind of other structures do we see? The first one here, San Gorgonio Memorial Hospital, Southern California. I represented them on a transaction that just consummated. So they entered into a management arrangement with Tenet. Tenet's got 3 other hospitals in their region. So Tenet's going to take it over and run that hospital starting January 1st. And they're going to deploy a lot of their sort of, corporate resources, services, IT. They are providing a line of credit to them for $15 million. So the financial backstop to sort of help them with working capital. Then another one down in San Diego County, Tri-City Medical Center, client of mine, has announced that they're doing a partnership with Sharp Healthcare. Sharp's a large hospital system in San Diego. So if they get voter approval next year, Sharp would come in and basically run that organization. Tri-City is losing a lot of money. They got a $33 million loan from the state, but they're still hemorrhaging financially. And then last example I'll give here is Palomar Health District, which is also in San Diego County, has announced that it's going to form something called a Joint Powers Authority next year with UC San Diego Health. And basically what that is it's kind of a joint venture arrangement where they create this new entity called the Health Authority. So Palomar would transfer, the way it's envisioned now, Palomar would transfer in 49% of its assets, including debt, into the authority. UCSD would put in $200 million to help develop infrastructure and service expansion. And there's sort of a phased approach, and if it goes well, they could go to a subsequent phase where Palomar would probably put all of its assets in there. And then they have a provision that after 7 years, UCSD would have the ability to buy the hospital. So, there are some other structures. There are different ways of doing it. Pros and cons depending on your situation. And so, as you kind of look at your options here, I think these are, potential options for you. And then lastly, as I said, hospitals are not doing well financially for the most part. I'm involved in a number of turnaround projects. One I'm most proud of is with a hospital you may have heard of called Sierra View Medical Center. It's in Porterville. 2 years ago, they were losing $22 million. We came in and helped them with labor, some non-labor costs, some automated solutions, pharmacy, and a couple other things. And I'm happy to report that recently, in their most recent financial, they had an $11 million positive bottom line. So, there are examples of hospitals that have struggled that have been able to turn it around. I think revenue cycle is a huge opportunity for all hospitals. I know Julie and your team are looking at some of that in terms of what your opportunities are. Labor for most hospitals, 50 to 60% of your cost is in labor. So to the extent to which you could look at that and become more efficient, do things like cross training, maybe bring in some new systems and functions, AI. We hear AI all over the place. There are some practical applications now for AI in a hospital. So there are other areas to look at costs. There's looking at contracts. Hospitals could always improve their performance. You can look at partnerships, and then ideally you'd want to sort of build more volume, right? Build up your service lines, do some things with physicians, maybe do some additional things contract wise to bring in volume and revenue. And those are all, things that can be done, but it's pretty difficult for an independent hospital, right? You need things like a really strong, robust information system. You need analytics, you need data. And so, what we're finding with a lot of the independents is they don't have the bandwidth or the capital or the expertise to do a lot of these things on their own. That's where we see in some of these partnerships where you're able to bring those resources and expertise and scale and economies of scale. We've seen the ability to really improve, the hospital in terms of performance, financials, and your longer term viability. So, as we look at the idea of partnerships and how we can improve, these are all areas that are, being looked at right now. And certainly with any partner, you would talk about all of these things. So I said a lot, but that's my input tonight. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Eric. We'll open up for questions after. We only got, I think, really 2 more slides on here. And so just an update here. So as you'll remember, when we last did the external partnerships ad hoc committee that was comprised of myself and Director Gallagher, we sent out the request for proposals in late 2024, and we received responses from 4 potential partners at that time. It was Sutter Health, Kaiser Permanente, Dignity Common Spirit, and our partners over at Salud para la Gente. And as a result of the most recent meeting, the strategy session that we had in August, we reopened conversations with 3 of those 4 potential partners to see, if they would be willing to come back to the table and rekindle those conversations. And up until this point, the names that you see there on the slide here: Sutter Health, Kaiser Permanente, Dignity Common Spirit, Stanford Community Hospital, Monterey Peninsula, University of California, County of Santa Cruz, and we have also had additional discussions with the County of Monterey and a few other partners as well over the last few weeks, just trying to see if there is a potential path forward for 2 potential partners to bring something to this board that we can at least take a look at and discuss. And conversations have been going well with several partners. And like I said, we don't have an agreement here. We don't have a structure here to discuss yet. And it's not as a lack of trying as the next. We can move to the next slide. As the next slide will show. So some of the additional work to date. So, a lot of due diligence, both with partners and then also trying to figure out, what our path looks like as well. And, can ask if Julie or Steve would like to add any additional kind of color, you know, at a high level in terms of what that due diligence has looked like over the last few weeks. Definitely on the finances and the clinical integration opportunities. It was great to dig down deep into some of those things as as Julie was working on the budget to present to the board. We've done, I think, as I said earlier, a lot of community engagement activities to seek feedback. And to Eric's point of his presentation, it's not just in California, but it's across the nation. You know, with the results of and the impacts coming from HR1 that we're seeing hospitals consolidate and close across the nation. I think we were just in a community engagement meeting earlier this week with partners and donors, and one of our partners that lives here in the county said that his child works at a hospital across the country, and that hospital actually just went into a merger recently because of the potential impacts of HR1. And so there's a lot of these discussions happening across the state, across the nation about how to preserve healthcare in any way possible for communities as a result of HR1, and also just how difficult it is to run a hospital, you know, in this kind of a climate. I think the ultimate goal of this, and then I'll stop talking and ask Alex if she wants to add anything about the work that we've done up until now, is you know, the goal of the ad hoc committee is to come back to the board in Q1 2026 with a potential agreement or a structure for us to review. And we put Q1 because you know, I would like to, and I want the board to hold the ad hoc committee to this expectation that it is not just going to be a one-off presentation and say, you got to vote on this today, but it is going to be a thorough discussion about what this looks like, and also, you know, some opportunities for all of you to kind of digest the work that we've been doing as well. So again, you know, I had said earlier in August that I wanted to bring back a potential structure or potential path forward here. Again, not by you know, lack of trying, but good discussion still happening. And the initial idea of having a potential agreement in place and a path forward by, in an answer to this, right, resolution to the work of the ad hoc committee by Q1 is definitely still the goal. And it aligns with some of the conversations that we had earlier today about March, April time being an important time for our district and our hospital. So Alex, anything that you want to add about the work in the last 4 months?
I think you covered it, and it has been definite. I think the leadership team has worked really, really hard with their due diligence, working with different partners. And so I feel very confident in the work that they're doing. And so I want the board to hear that, because I know that it feels a little mysterious sometimes. It feels mysterious to me too. But our leadership team is working incredibly hard and dedicating more time than I feel like they have for that. And so I appreciate them, and I hope Q1 brings us something that we can present.
Thanks for your work on it. Yeah. Steve and Julie, anything that you wanted to add to the conversation about the due diligence part, and anything that as we've been pulling back the hood of the hospital? Obviously, we do this every year to get ready for the budget process and stuff, but anything that you've been able to uncover, anything in terms of the due diligence of the last two or so months?
Well, I mean, I think just to give you a kind of a high level overview, I mean, we've pulled together a lot of data, just trying to go from kind of current run rate to 26 budget to what future year, with some, you know, basic assumptions around inflation factors and things, you know, what our run rate could look like in a do nothing.
Right.
You know, as you can imagine, only gets worse because expenses grow faster than reimbursement grows. And then, you know, by looking at, you know, potential new clinical services that could come in, potential kind of expansion as you try to grow, not just our immediate service area, but the service area out a little bit. You know, just what sort of of an investment it takes to get there,
Right.
you know, the need for a partnership that can come in and invest, as well as the challenges that you will face with, you know, having the appropriate physician coverage, you know, moving the payer mix, things like that. So it's been a very, I mean, there's a lot of work, and it has been challenged by our lack of systems and easily accessible data. But there's, you know, there's been a lot of good discussion there.
Thank you. I'll just also add that if we can go back to we'll go back one slide real fast to the potential partners. So on some of these, for some of these are already really great partners that are already operating in the hospital, right? One of the ones that is not on there and is a key and critical partner for us as well, Salud para la Gente. And I just want to take a moment here to continue to emphasize that all of the partners that are already, you know, operating out of Watsonville Community Hospital and have helped us get this far. I would just want to say that, you know, regardless of what ends up coming of this ad hoc committee process, that those partners are still an essential piece to the future of Watsonville Community Hospital. And so that goes for Stanford, that goes for Salud para la Gente, and that definitely goes for our partners at Kaiser Permanente, who over the last decade, really since, you know, they came into Santa Cruz County, have been an excellent partner. And especially in these trying times in 2025, when we lost coverage, they stepped right in and have been able to really help us sustain, you know, access to healthcare in our community. And so just wanted to take a moment here and just thank our current partners for all the work that you've done, for all the work that they'll continue to do, and let them know that, you know, regardless of what happens after or at the end of this, at this ad hoc committee process and what the result is, we still see all of our current partners as essential to making this hospital work. I think, you know, initially there was an idea during the first ad hoc committee process that, you know, Watsonville Community Hospital can be like the Switzerland, where everyone comes in and has a place and can continue to practice and that sort of stuff. And in order for this hospital to work with, you know, the challenges that we have of the population that we want to continue to serve and ensure that they have access to healthcare, that sort of model is going to be the model that we need to continue to seek, and that we need to continue to push for. And so just thank you to all of our partners, you know, special thank you to everyone else that has been here and has been a part of this process and has lent their time. You know, I think just off the top of my head, it's about 6 community information sessions. Some of them have been at Rotary clubs. Others have been, you know, at the board, at the John Friel boardroom, and all of those discussions have come with great questions, come with great suggestions, and with great really care for this community. And so that's been really great for us to be able to get together with our partners, let them know what's happening, and then to answer questions and to hear their concerns. And so that's been an essential part to this process. So I'll end the update there, the presentation there. I'll open up to any questions or comments from the board. And then I do want to take public comment for this as well, although I don't need to, but I would like to. Any questions from the board?
A couple. Just making sure, Nina, could you speak to how Eric came to be part of this process and what you felt this company brought versus other companies? Why him in this moment, or why his company in this moment?
Definitely, I think Steve can talk, can start us off about how we were connected with Eric, and then the first meeting I felt I can come talk personally, like why I thought he was going to be a good addition to the team.
Yeah, Director Pimentel, Eric and his company came to us through BBK. They are an organization that they've worked together on partnerships like this and other deal structures. And so he was contacted through BBK, which gives us some really good synergies on things that they've done together before, and that they understand us really well and how to work together. So that's that's how we were introduced to Eric at this firm.
Yeah, and I'll just speak as well. We had an introductory meeting with Eric, and that was what was appealing. Bringing him aboard is his expertise, and then also how closely he works with BBK or legal counsel and understanding. You know, we're gonna have to be pretty nimble about what a potential structure looks like, right? In the amount of time in which, you know, we would have to move forward on something like this. And so, and like I said, over the last month or so of meetings that he's been in, asking the right questions, helping us really weave through some really difficult conversations around potential structure and what the future would look like and that sort of stuff. And still not moving the conversation in ways that the ad hoc committee does not want to go, but really, you know, pushing us back onto, here's the sort of decision points that we should keep at hand throughout this process. So I've been very impressed, and I just thank Eric for his work up to this point and the work that'll come in the next couple of months. Any other questions?
If you don't mind, questions to Eric,
Please. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, for presenting today. I appreciate the context and the background. 3 questions. One is a spinoff of what I just started. If you can talk to a little bit about what attracted you to this opportunity, what we view it as. And then 2, if you could speak to, in that essence, what I presume, what you think are what bargaining table assets, negotiation leverage do we have that we bring to the table, whether it's our location or voter approved legislative support, like what are those things that make us an attractive partner? But if you could start with why you wanted to be part of this journey.
Good question. You know, I do work in the hospital space, so that's what I do. That's where I have expertise. I really enjoy working with independent hospitals. I want to see them succeed. I've had a good track record in that space, so you know, that attracted me. The fact that BBK is your counsel, and I've worked with them in other situations. I think, as has been mentioned, I think that's very important. So you know, that's a good working relationship. I don't want to see any community lose its hospital, right? And so if I can come in and help, and you know, it's a good fit and it makes sense, I'm open and love to do that. I get a lot of gratification. You know, I mentioned the Sierra View example. If I can come in and help a hospital become more viable over the next 10 to 20 years, I'm interested in that every time. In terms of your second question, what assets do you bring to bear? Probably more than I can speak to at this point, but I think you know, you are a sole community provider in some respects in terms of where you're located, your geography. You know, there are other hospitals around regionally, but as I understand it, you know, it could take up to 45 minutes to get to one of those other facilities. So, you know, when you look at things like an emergency department and the importance of that, and you know, some of the other services that you offer to that community, you know, they're vital services. So, you know, I think it's important that you're there. You know, for an organization that's looking at creating a network, you know, you could be an important part of that, a geographic network, a hospital network. You know, you have capacity, right? So if you look at the number of beds you have, you're not full. So that can be an asset. The fact that someone could partner with you, and if you know, Kaiser does this all the time, right? And they partner with you. If they don't have enough capacity, they will partner with another hospital because they need some place to put patients, right? So you have that. You've got local physicians who have probably been in the community for many years. You have a governance group that's been in the community for many years that understands that community. Healthcare is locally driven in most cases, so the idea of kind of having a history, understanding the local community and the physician piece is really important, I think, right, in terms of that. So, those are some of the things that I see at this point in terms of, what you would have to offer. And as I said, there's probably plenty of other ones that some of which I'll learn about here going forward.
Any other questions?
No, I appreciate that framing. I mean, there are things that we're really proud of, our hospital, thanks to our prior CEO, John Friel, who led the development of this hospital, seismically sound. We love the location next to an airport, and there's plenty of parking, and, there's a lot of things that make us very attractive. We have single rooms, I just think there's so many great assets that give us that marketability and patients, providers, and partners. So I appreciate that context.
And kudos to your leadership in the community for doing what you've done with your hospital and the way you stepped up to save the hospital. Basically, I've seen a lot of communities that just folded, but it seems like there's been a lot of rallying, and the city, other organizations and individuals that have really stepped up to help keep your hospital going. So that's great.
And I'll ask shamelessly that we get your best and your team's best effort. I mean, this is not just a project for us. We're from this community. We volunteer time here. We're representing, this one hospital, easily 300,000 lives are dependent on it. When you look at how delicate, as you mentioned, our healthcare system is, we need this to succeed. The state is invested in us. The locals are invested in us. Our donors stepped up to help us turn this around. We want this to be a model success story that we can talk across the nation about how rural hospitals can stay a part of the system. So we really look forward to this being successful, and we appreciate and expect nothing but your best level of work. And, hopefully there's, 30 minutes on Christmas Day. You're probably busy, but you're thinking about us. So looking forward to you and your team's support.
Well said. I'll give you my best, I promise.
Any other questions for the committee or for Eric at this moment? Okay, I'll just end here. I know that we have two additional items, but just to kind of put a ribbon or whatever we want to call on this conversation is, like I said, additional work to be done by the ad hoc committee, and I think Eric mentioned it, but 2 years ago we received $8 to $9 million loan from the distressed hospital loan. I said we probably should have applied for 15 or 20. And one of the recipients of that loan was Madera, which received, I think, the most of any of about $57 million. And they're still looking at potential additional partnerships and strategic moves as well too, as a result of HR1. And so it's really getting at the heart of what the issue is for hospitals, independent healthcare providers like us, which is being a part of a larger healthcare system and having access to those resources in a strategic way that still continues to provide local healthcare for the folks who live in that community is the way that most hospitals are continuing to go. And as Director Pimentel said and asked of Eric, I ask the rest of the board to ask that of Alex and I as we go through this, and of Steve as well. And we'll do the same thing. We'll give you our best and come back in Q1 a little bit sooner with an update as to all the work that's happening. But so more to come here. But just thanks for the confidence, and the work continues. Okay. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7 here. This is the emergency department design. Steve, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so as you know, the text and language of Measure N that the voters passed in March of 2024 gives us the opportunity and the directive to renovate / expand our emergency department. That is how it was written. And so we have been engaged in that work throughout 2025. And TNZ Bowermaster is the principal architect for Trainer. And she has been doing wonderful work with her team and our emergency department team. So Dr. Claypool, our emergency department physician lead with Vituity, is here with us on the call as well. And so I think Tansy is going to lead us through a presentation to show you what we've got so far in terms of the design. And Dr. Claypool can chime in as well from the clinician standpoint, as can Trina if she wants to. Although Tansy, I apologize, you're getting this group at a moment of fatigue after 3.5-hour meeting, but we are excited to see what you've got.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
We'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'm sure everybody's had a long day. So I'm Tansy Bowermaster, as he said. I'm a principal with Trainer, and I'm a certified healthcare architect, and I've been working with your hospital since at least 2013, so over a decade. And a lot of our work has been just keeping the hospital up to date and helping you with whatever projects you need. It doesn't matter how big or how small they are. But let's talk about your emergency department. So Measure N gives you the goal of doubling your 12-bed capacity. Go ahead, next slide. And I don't know if Dr. Claypool, if you want to elaborate on this.
Yeah, one of the selling points for Measure N, as we were running frantically in the community to get it, and resonate with the community, was to get money for the hospital to ensure its long-term viability, but also to expand our emergency services. And it's been a wonderful project, and we're excited that we're doing the ED expansion at this point.
All right, next slide. So we've been really digging in and making sure we do our due diligence. We've completed so far a code review. We've done some programming exercises. We've had at least 9 meetings where we've just made sure that we understand what the needs are for the department. We had some review of the existing conditions where one of our designers shadowed Dr. Claypool and really looked around in the facility to understand what we're starting with. We've also there are a few code issues that we found just based on the age of the facility that we chatted with OSHPD a little bit to make sure we were on the right track. They were nice enough to help us with some egress balcony situations that we found a way to work around. We've also had structural engineers and mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers look at a high level just to see what would be involved in doing an addition to this building, to make sure that we understand, for example, the condition of your air handler units, your electrical support, things that would be needed to support the expansion. And we've also reviewed the site to look at the ambulance path, how other folks come to the emergency department, and making sure there's adequate parking and drop off. And then we came down to several test fits that included 24 beds, 8 fast track chairs, which I'll explain more in a bit, and then also updated trauma room. So you can go to the next slide. The area shown in green is the proposed addition as it stands now with the current program. And the area in gray is the current emergency department. So the existing department is just over 8,000 square feet. And it makes sense if you're doubling your bed capacity that the addition is just over 8,000 square feet as well. All right, next slide. Well, working with Dr. Claypool, we came up with this pod concept where if you're really busy, where we have these circles drawn on the plan here on the slide, each one is a pod and they could all be seeing patients at the same time. Or if it's a slow day or a slow time, as happens in emergency departments, you could close down some of the pods and work out of the primary pod is pod 1. And that would be more efficient for staff and also has increased safety. And then the area at the pod 4 at the bottom is a fast track area. So those are usually chairs, not beds, and it's for patients that are just lower acuity and need to be seen but can be moved through a little faster. And then we're also paying attention to the Assembly Bill 2975 requirements for metal detection and a more secure entrance. Do you want to add anything, Dr. Claypool?
Yeah, the theory of pods is, as she is saying, is you can expand and contract based on volume. You know, nighttime it's lower volume typically than during the daytime. But it also allows, it kind of follows in with nursing staffing ratios, physician capacity during a shift is usually about eight beds, and nursing is 4 to 1 in the emergency department. So this 8 bed pod just really works well with one provider and 2 nurses. And growing and shrinking as the day goes, and trying to maintain it as much efficiency as possible.
All right, next slide. One of the challenges for the project will be phasing, since you need to maintain operations during construction. So we did just a high-level look at how we might be able to implement the new waiting area first and get that out of the way for where we need to do an addition. And then we could build the addition, which if you see, we have these labeled 1, 2, and 3. So phase 2 would be the addition in the colored diagram. And then phase 3 would be, you have your addition open and operating. It already has an increased capacity to what you have now. Then we go back and remodel the existing department. Okay, next slide. And then here are just some high-level looks. We can develop the style as we move through design, but we just took a first pass at a massing model you see in the upper right. That shows a covered drop-off and some nice inviting glazing for the new waiting room. It'll be a little easier to find than it is now. And then updated ambulance drop-off. We're hoping to have a pull-through style drop-off rather than a back-in, which is more efficient. And then the area shaded in teal on the bottom diagram is the portion of the parking lot that ideally would be updated to handle additional emergency department parking, and it's showing that ambulance drop-off. And then the area in gray in that diagram is your existing hospital and your central utility plant. All right, next slide. And these are just a few photos from our site visits. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Steve or Dr. Claypool, anything you want to add before we open it up for questions about the project?
No, it's been a good process moving forward, and we've had excellent input from the nursing staff as well. So I want to give kudos to our educator, Zach Fernelli, and our new ED nursing director, Kirsten Palmquist, for jumping in and giving some great input to this as well. It's a team effort. and how flexible the trainer folks have been in terms of we've gone through a lot of iterations and we finally are getting towards something that we think will really work.
Okay, Alicia, or,
Tenzie, my name's Joe Gallagher. Is it total of 24 beds plus chairs, or is it 24 beds plus 8 fast track chairs?
You have 3 pods of 8, which have beds, and then in addition to that, you have 8 chairs.
And Joe, there's also in addition to those 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The trauma bays can be split into 2 beds when they're not being actively used for trauma as well. So that does expand capacity somewhat.
Yeah, those are designed to handle surge capacity. You could fit 2 folks in each one if you really needed to.
And I don't see it on here, but there's a sub-waiting room, which is another technique of keeping people from occupying rooms who who are there for relatively minor things that we can move patients through quicker. It's just a technique for more efficient flow of patients.
yellow one in the middle.
Yeah, it's the yellow one right in the center, and so that's results waiting and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
David, can I ask, I heard you say there's lots of nursing input, and hopefully they've been really central in this and get to go over this and sort of chew on it and think about how it all works. Is that?
Absolutely. Actually,
Okay.
When we have our nursing educator, Zach, you should meet him. He's pretty much a genius. He really honed in on this really tightly and was able to visualize and verbalize a lot of the things that I was trying to get across and made them much more I don't know how to say, but just made it concrete so everybody kind of knew what was going on and really looked at nursing flow and how this would work with the nursing make sure that nurses were being very well represented in this design process.
The other comment I have is we had some pods built on the 3rd floor at the far ends of the nursing unit. And until you put equipment in them, they seem fine. And then when you put a Pyxis machine in and a printer, there's basically no room to work. So I think that is something that I felt like was the only time they're used is when a nurse wants to go away from the din of the nursing station and do some charting or something like that. So they're basically non-functional. My other thought is, having worked in the ER in the old hospital, it was sort of an open format. The room was square or rectangular, but the nursing station was in the center and it was round, and I saw the sort of the interaction between nurses. There's lots and lots of information that gets passed off very quickly in a few seconds in those kinds of conversations that don't really require a phone call or somebody to walk around to the other unit. So I don't know how ER design has evolved, but this is really quite the opposite of that, where it's broken down into segments that I could imagine, depending on patient flow, et cetera, it would add a lot of complexity about how to go open the next unit, or is there a decision to close this pod or such. So in a way, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Director Gallagher. Any other questions? Or comments here? Please.
Future comments about when you build it, will they come and will revenue show up? So I think I want to really understand the business investment side of this as well as we move on down the line, not tonight. Recognizing that this increases capacity, you put more people on shift, more providers, more nurses. Right now, I think we have, because of our space limitation, I presume it's easy to staff because we can only fit so many people and we always have a wait line. But in a scenario where we might not need that much capacity, how do we manage that? So those are like next level questions about how do we end up operating and staffing this from a financial standpoint that I'm eager to learn more.
Any additional questions?
I just think, not to counter Director Pimentel's point, because I agree with him, but I also liked the idea in my head of understanding the different pods and seeing that you can shut some of them down when it's lower volumes, and it doesn't impact the overall flow and run of the ER. So that sounds like maybe that will play into the concern that we have regarding number of patients, et cetera. But I do like that idea, and it sounds really great.
Any other questions?
I see, Dr. Claypool has his hand raised.
Oh, please.
I just want to address Marcus's comment is I've been involved in several ED redesigns, and my experience has been if you build it, they will come. My last place, we were the same size as we are now. I know we don't have the volume that I did at my last place, but we went from a 32,000 visit ER, tripled the size of it, and 3 years later, we're seeing close to 80,000 patients. So they do come to the new place, particularly the new place is well run, and shiny and pretty.
Sorry, I have another question. David or Tansy, are each of the pods going to be staffed? Say, for instance, a ward clerk can each answer the phone and handle that local, staffing, supply places within the pod, or is that all going to be centralized and have to function out of one pod?
We do have some larger supply rooms, but then we also have supply rooms in each pod. So we want to make sure there's not long travel distances for things that you need on hand.
Thank you.
And Joe, this is still in process. So we're getting close to where we want to be. We're not there yet. And just looking at it now again with all you guys looking at it, I can see some things that could be improved, but that's just how the process has been with Trainer. It's been a very collaborative process where we make suggestions and they make modifications. You can see all those red squares those are structural things that do affect where and how you can put things. So.
So sorry, this is something I'm obviously very interested in. In the current structure of the ER, having been in and out of there a fair amount, to me, rooms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 12 are really not big enough or deep enough in either dimension. Is that going to be addressed? You can barely get a hospital bed in there or a gurney.
Right. Yes, we are increasing your standard bed size. We're not going with code minimum. We're showing more of a standard that we're seeing throughout the industry. So that you'll have more space for equipment in these. And that's really important as you have aging population with higher acuity patients, that we have room for the proper equipment.
And just for scale, Joe, both the trauma and treatment rooms are bigger than our current trauma room. Each one is bigger. So it's hard to see the scale on something like this, but the dimensions are quite generous particularly compared to what we have, but in general, in other ERs I've been in.
Good. And then does the footprint of the new space, I understand that it looks like it lies outside the current perimeter of the first floor. Across the hall from the ER are 2 overflow beds that at times have been used for telemetry or during the pandemic for ICU beds. Does any of this encroach on those 2 beds?
No.
We're taking over the ED overflow, but not the ICU overflow.
Yeah, ICU overflow is untouched.
I think those 2 rooms, Joe, are these 2 rooms.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I saw the big footprint. It didn't look like, but I needed to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? Hey, man, you knocked on how many thousands of homes, Joe?
Yeah.
So you asked all the questions. You ask all the questions you want.
Well, there's one more that comes to mind.
Please.
David, decades ago, I used to moonlight in ERs, and I always had a sense that I knew what was going on in each room in the ER, or a sense, or how quickly the nurse went to the room, said, oh, I better go take a look. To me, this looks all broken up, and it does not afford that kind of peripheral vision. Is that a thing of the past, or does this still do it for you?
Well, I would say that that is part of the design, the things that we're working on.
Okay,
The with a better EHR, it's easier to keep track of what's going on in each thing than what we have.
sure.
And mostly, and except for the very busiest time, you'll have complete situational awareness of what your pod is. So there may not be somebody who knows the whole ED really well, but will know the person who's there will know their area very well.
I got it. All right, thank you.
Can I ask a question or no?
I'll open up for public comment in a bit. Any other questions or comments at this point? Big, please.
Seed planting for, again, kind of forecasting about when does this come back to the board timeline? What are the decisions that the board will need to be ready and thinking about to make decisions on? God, it's late at night. I had too many things, but I'll stop there. And I'm not, David, I'm not looking for a response now. Just, identifying
Next steps.
Sounds like more like a question for me.
Yeah.
I think the purpose of this presentation is more to show you that more to show the community and the board that action is being taken on Measure N monies, and we're moving forward with a design process that is getting a lot of enthusiasm from the staff and is really addressing what the Measure N was passed for, really one of the things, and probably in the end the most visible thing that, other than owning the hospital, that Measure N will have provided to the community.
You want to talk next steps?
So I was just gonna do specifically to Marcus's question of real board action will come when we do an RFP for a construction for a contractor, for general contractor, and get the approval for staff to move forward with the chosen contractor. At which point we will probably also present the final design at that point.
Any additional comments? Have a couple, but and then I'll obviously open it up for public comment. Maybe I'll do that first and then come back. All right. Oh, Julie, please.
I'm just curious on, what the process for determining how much space you need for registration, because I only see 2, and that looks very undersized for an ED this size. And I don't need an answer more than I want to make sure that we come back to that before we finalize the design.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that. Okay, so I will open up for public comment on this. Anyone online? I'll start online. Anyone online wishing to speak on this item? Rosie can't see them, but
I do not see any hands online.
okay. Anyone in person, please?
It's Jennifer. My request is that, because I haven't seen this before, so I'd like to look at it with you with both the pharmacy standpoint, respiratory, and maybe have the supply chain guy look at it too, to make sure that the storage is going to be adequate. The first time we did this, you guys had taken a Pyxis machine away from yourselves, and it didn't seem like it was going to work out well for your flow, so we added it back. So now you're getting to the point, it looks like, where you can involve some of the other your operations support departments. So we'd like to be involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay,
I
please.
comment also.
You can maybe just stand. How
Okay.
I was standing.
Don't do that.
Both Robin. I've been a part of not all, but many of these design meetings also from a facilities perspective. And we've been having these meetings for months already and have gone through many plans and lots of thoughts and everyone building on their own thoughts and seeing the new plans from Trainer, and it has been very collaborative. And I think it will be good.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Okay. There's no other public comments. I'll now close down the public comment, bring back to the board for any closing comments or questions from the board. Anything else? Just, I'll close here just by saying, Dr. Claypool, I understand you're extremely busy, man. Just thank you for helping us with this and lending your expertise and for continuing to make sure that this is a collaborative process with staff. And I echo what Joe was saying in his points as well, that you know, it really has to serve our patients and our residents and our clients, but also has to serve our staff, right? And has to meet all of their expectations as well. And that's just a good, you know, good standard to have as a team. Thanks, Steve, for bringing this forward. I know that with everything else going on in the hospital, and then obviously all of the expenditures of the first round of dollars for Measure N, this really puts kind of a little bit of a cap of like what we had expected as a board for the first expenditures of Measure N, of purchasing the property, doing some real basic kind of retrofits of the building, and then bringing this forward to us. So just thank you, Steve, for bringing this to us and staying on schedule with this in the midst of everything else that's happening, you know, across healthcare, and then obviously here locally with Watsonville Community Hospital. And then to answer your question of if you build it, so on and so forth, you know, I think we're expecting a decline or projecting decline in emergency room visits next year. At the same time, we have the downtown Watsonville specific plan, which is over the next 25 years, opening up zoning in downtown for 4,000 additional housing units, right? We have Watsonville's general plan that hopefully, fingers crossed, that city approves that plan sometime this year, which is going to open up space for another 6,000 housing units over the next 8 years. And so our community is going to continue to grow. Our county is going to continue to grow. And although it is extremely difficult to live in our county, and we've kind of, it feels like we've almost plateaued at 270,000 odd residents or whatever, I feel like we will continue to grow. And Watsonville, because of our continued progress toward more infill development in our downtown and other areas in our community, is going to be where a lot of the housing units come to. And so you know, that was the whole idea behind Measure N, is this emergency room has not grown since it was first established back in the 90s. We were a community of about 25 to 30,000 people. We are now a community of about 70,000. We haven't grown since then. And so this is really just to get us to the numbers that we're at today, and to plan for the future so that we can meet the capacity of our community that's going to make up this region in the next 20 to 30 years. Please, Joe.
A historical note. When CHS spun the hospital off the quorum and the execs came, the first thing they said is, this ER is inadequate for this hospital. It's the first thing on the top of their plan to expand. And so it was 12 rooms, but then there are two gurneys in the hallway on this side and a chair and a gurney on that side. And so, yeah, I don't have a very side. Yeah, just build right up.
I want to at least comment that, why would I be saying that? Like, in the paradigm that we're in right now, HR1, that big FB thing, it's gonna push more people into our PD. So I just want to make sure we're being mindful about the overhead staffing costs to get there. And, you know, I'll use the word trauma. I carry a little bit of trauma, because I remember sitting in this same room in 2022, coming out of having consultants and prior CEO and prior CFO say, cath lab, and having people in the audience and staff saying, slow your roll. Every consultant says cath lab, and here we are. And I think I wish we would have, I thought we were asking really hard questions, and I wish we would have been able to ask harder questions back then. So I just want to make sure we're always asking those questions.
Definitely. Okay, if there's no other comments, I will close down item number 7, and we'll move on to item number 8. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8 now. This is the approval of support for rural health transformation program funding for Watsonville Community Hospital. The recommendation here is to consider adopting a resolution in support of Watsonville Community Hospital's prioritization for rural health transformation program funding and designation as a regional hub hospital. Contact here is Steve.
Yeah, and Chair Nunez, thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this, because you really drafted the letter that is before the board today for approval to send to our local elected officials, asking them to make sure that Watsonville Community Hospital is on the list for the rural health transformation program funding that should be coming to the state early by the end of this year, early next year. We have also had positive conversations with the County of Monterey, the County of Santa Cruz, the City of Watsonville, the City of Capitola, and the City of Santa Cruz, willing to send this letter on our behalf as well as a number of local nonprofits that have offered to do so as well. So we hope to have a nice package of letters going to the elected officials in Sacramento to make sure that we're on that list.
Yeah, just some additional information. As Steve said, the decision, and it was in the packet of the report as well, but just to read it out to the public. So this program really started, I believe, around the same time that HR 1 was approved in July. And it was the pool of $50 billion, excuse me, from that was put forward by the director of Center for CMS with a sign off from RFK Jr. No giggles here. And we're asking for money from them. But and so the CMS was the agency at the federal level that is implementing this program, and then was asking for applications at the state level. And so every state put in an application of how they would use the baseline of $100 million that would come to each state equally. So all 50 states getting $100 million of a baseline for them to use as they see fit. And then the application process was really how states is going to be determined by CMS of how much of the additional potential $100 million that they could get every year. So I know I just said that in the most convoluted way. It's 9 p.m. Apologies. Every state across the nation is getting a baseline of $100 million, and then CMS will determine how much they might get in addition of an additional $100 million, and that's how they got to the $50 billion across the nation. So for all of the reasons that was stated in the report in your packet tonight, we feel that Watsonville Community Hospital is a good and fits a description of exactly what these dollars should be used for. I also, so it will be a potential of $200 million coming to the state of California every year for the next 5 years. That is for rural healthcare providers like us. And I do want to, preface it by saying that the state just did this. I know we touched a little bit on this in our previous discussion, but the distressed hospital loan, I believe that one-time opportunity was, I think, $300 million is that program. And so just kind of as a perspective, $200 million in a year seems like a lot, and we know that in healthcare it's not, right? And so it will be an extremely competitive process, and I would imagine that the more people and the more critical mass that we can form as a district and as advocates for this hospital, the better our chances will be to be not only a one-time recipient, but an ongoing possible recipient of these funds that come in every single year. So just thank you for Steve for moving quickly as I was trying to get this onto the board agenda, and also engaging with our community partners and our local government partners. And hopefully we can start the conversation, or at least continue the conversation with our state legislature, our partners at the state legislature, and put ourselves in a good position to be a beneficiary of this program over the next 5 years. So any questions from the board And then I will open it to public comment on this. No questions. Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on item number 8? See no attendees online, so I'll move on to people here with us. Any comment? Okay. Close on the public comment, bring it back for any final comments from the board and also an appropriate motion on this resolution before us.
Well, I'll move approval. I'll acknowledge and thank that we started. Appreciate Chair Nunez, you and all the staff who put this together, and I really mean you, Chair Nunez, who's working hard on this idea. And hopefully common sense prevails in that they see hospitals like us who have matching funds in the form of voter-approved ballot measures that can help us, modernize facilities. We're a good partner for something like this. We have the ability to receive that investment, ensure it stays here, and turn it into something that stabilizes us for another 100 years. So I like to think we're going to be an excellent candidate. I appreciate the work to make sure we're top of the list.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Directors Pimentel and Gallagher. I'll let you go on this item. Director Cox?
Yes.
Director Creel?
Yes.
Director Gallagher?
Yes.
Director Pimentel?
Yes.
Chair Nunez?
Yes. Okay, with that, I will adjourn us for the night. Thank you. Thank you, Allison.